The clockmaker's daughter stood behind the counter on that scorching August afternoon in 1885, watching a man die through the shop window. And in that moment of violence, she knew her life would never be the same. Natalie Voss pressed her palm against the glass as the gunfight erupted in the dusty street of Guthrie, Oklahoma Territory. Two men faced each other, hands hovering over their holsters, and then shots rang out. One man crumpled, and the other man stood frozen, looking down at what he had done with horror written across his face. The victor was young, maybe 25 or 26, with sun-weathered skin and dark hair that hung to his collar. Even from inside her father's shop, Natalie could see the anguish in his eyes as townspeople rushed into the street. Her father, Wilhelm Voss, emerged from his workshop in the back, wiping grease from his fingers with a cloth. The precision tools of his trade hung neatly on the wall behind him, each clock mechanism a testament to his belief that time could be controlled, measured, and contained within brass gears and springs. "Another senseless death," Wilhelm said in his thick German accent, shaking his head. "Time stops for no man, yet men stop each other's time without thought." Natalie turned from the window, her green eyes troubled. At 22, she had spent her entire life in this shop, learning her father's craft with steady hands and sharper mind. She could disassemble a pocket watch blindfolded and reassemble it perfectly. She understood springs and escapements, balance wheels and hairsprings. But the violence of the frontier still shocked her, even after living here for 5 years since they had moved from St. Louis. "That man looked devastated," she said quietly. "The one who fired. Self-defense or murder, death wears the same face," Wilhelm replied. He returned to his workbench, where a grandfather clock mechanism lay spread before him like mechanical entrails. The door chimed as someone entered. Natalie turned to see Sheriff Morrison, a gray-haired man with kind eyes that had seen too much. Behind him stood the young man from the street, still pale, his hands trembling slightly. "Miss Voss, Wilhelm," the sheriff said, tipping his hat. "Need to ask if either of you witnessed what happened out there." "Only the end," Wilhelm said without looking up from his work. The sheriff nodded. "This here is Samuel Turner, ranch hand from the Double T spread. Says Jack Reeves drew on him first, over some dispute about cards last night. We got 3 witnesses say the same. It was a clean shoot, but Samuel here is pretty shaken up." Samuel Turner met Natalie's eyes, and she saw something in them that made her chest tighten. Not just fear or regret, but a deep sadness, as if he carried the weight of more than just today's violence. His shirt was dusty from the trail, his boots worn but well-maintained. He held his hat in both hands, gripping the brim like it was the only solid thing in a spinning world. "I never wanted to kill anyone," Samuel said, his voice rough. "He gave me no choice." "The law sees it as justified," Sheriff Morrison assured him. "But a man's conscience is his own burden to carry." Natalie found herself stepping forward. "Would you like some water, Mr. Turner? You look like you could use it." He blinked, seeming to truly see her for the first time. "That would be kind of you, miss." She poured water from the pitcher they kept behind the counter, her hands steady despite the strange flutter in her stomach. When she handed him the glass, their fingers brushed briefly, and she felt something pass between them, some recognition that neither understood yet. Samuel drank deeply, then set the glass down carefully on the counter. His eyes fell on the array of clocks surrounding them, all ticking in slightly different rhythms, creating a symphony of measured time. "Your father makes these. He repairs them mostly," Natalie said. "But he builds some too. I help him. You repair clocks." Samuel's eyebrows rose slightly, the first expression other than grief she had seen on his face. "I do. Have since I was 15. She picked up a pocket watch from the counter, its brass case catching the light. "This one belongs to the bank manager. The mainspring broke. Simple fix, really." Wilhelm looked up then, studying the young cowboy with the assessing gaze he usually reserved for complex mechanisms. "You work at the Double T?" "Yes, sir. Going on 3 years now. I am foreman there." "Honest work," Wilhelm approved. "Physical labor, but honest." Sheriff Morrison cleared his throat. "Well, I just needed statements. Samuel, you are free to go. Might want to lay low for a few days, though. Reeves had some friends who might not care about the legalities." After they left, Natalie found she could not concentrate on her work. She kept thinking about the look in Samuel Turner's eyes, the way his voice had caught when he said he never wanted to kill anyone. She thought about how carefully he had set down the water glass, as if afraid his shaking hands might break it. "That boy will be back," Wilhelm said suddenly. Natalie looked up, startled. "What? The cowboy? He will return?" Her father's eyes twinkled with something she rarely saw there, a hint of mischief. "I saw how he looked at you. Papa, he just killed a man. I doubt he is thinking about anything but that. Perhaps. Or perhaps he is thinking that in all that violence he saw something good, something worth returning to." Wilhelm fitted a tiny gear into place with tweezers. "Your mother, God rest her soul, I met her the day after my brother died. I was in darkness and she was light. Sometimes that is how it happens. Natalie's mother had died of fever 3 years ago, and her father still wore his wedding ring, still spoke to her as if she might walk through the door any moment. Their love had been the kind that measured itself not in grand gestures but in small, daily devotions. Every clock Wilhelm made, he made thinking of her, because she had loved the sound of ticking, said it reminded her that every moment was precious. The afternoon stretched on, customers coming and going. A woman needed her husband's watch mended. A farmer wanted to know if they could fix the clock tower at the church. Wilhelm took notes, made promises, calculated prices. Natalie worked beside him, her hands busy but her mind elsewhere. 3 days passed before Samuel Turner returned. Natalie was alone in the shop, her father having gone to meet with the church committee about the tower clock. When the door chimed and she looked up to see Samuel standing there, hat in hand once again, her heart did something complicated in her chest. "Mr. Turner," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "How can I help you?" He stepped inside, moving carefully as if the shop were filled with fragile things, which she supposed it was. "I need a watch fixed," he said. "If you have time." "Of course." She gestured to the counter. "Let me see it." He pulled a battered pocket watch from his vest, the silver case tarnished and dented. When he opened it, she saw an inscription inside the cover, though she was too polite to read it fully. She caught only the words, "my son," before focusing on the mechanism. "It stopped running 2 years ago," Samuel said quietly. "It was my father's. He died, and shortly after the watch stopped. I have been carrying it anyway, but I would like it to work again, if it can be fixed." Natalie examined the watch carefully, using her jeweler's loupe to inspect the movement. "The balance staff is broken," she said after a moment, "and the mainspring has lost its tension. But yes, I can fix it. It will take about a week." "How much?" She quoted him a fair price, watching his face. He did not flinch, just nodded. "That is fine. I get paid end of the week anyway." "You do not have to pay until you pick it up," she said. Then, surprising herself, she added, "How are you doing after what happened?" Samuel's jaw tightened. "I wake up seeing his face. Sheriff says it will fade with time, but I do not know. Taking a life, even in defense of your own, it changes something in you." "I imagine it would." Natalie set the watch down carefully. "My father says every moment counts, that we do not get to waste a single second because we never know how many we have. He says that is why he fixes clocks, to remind people that time is precious. Wise man. Samuel looked around the shop again, at the clocks in various states of repair, the tools hung with Germanic precision, the light streaming through the windows to illuminate dancing dust motes. This place, it feels peaceful, like the world slows down when you step inside. That is exactly what my mother used to say. Natalie smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. She said my father built a sanctuary from time, even though he spent all his time measuring it. They stood there for a moment, neither speaking, and it was not awkward. The clocks ticked around them, each one marking seconds that suddenly felt more significant than they had minutes before. "I should go," Samuel said finally. "I have work waiting, but I will come back end of the week for the watch. Yes, it will be ready." He turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Miss Voss, thank you, not just for fixing the watch, but for treating me like a person, not like someone to fear." "I do not fear you, Mr. Turner. I think you are someone who did what he had to do and is paying the price in his conscience. That makes you a good man, not a dangerous one." After he left, Natalie held his father's watch in her hands, feeling the weight of it, the history contained in the dented silver case. She opened it again and this time read the full inscription. "To my son Samuel, may you always have time for what matters. Love, Papa." She thought about her own father, about the hours they spent together in companionable silence, fixing the broken things people brought them. She thought about how Wilhelm had taught her that every clock had a personality, that you had to listen to it, understand it, before you could heal it. She wondered if people were the same way. The week that followed felt strangely long. Natalie found herself watching the door more than usual, startling every time the bell chimed. She worked on Samuel's watch with extra care, cleaning every tiny component, replacing the broken balance staff with one she machined herself on her father's lathe, installing a new mainspring with exactly the right tension. When she was done, the watch ran perfectly, its tick strong and steady. Wilhelm noticed, of course. "You spend much time on that piece." "It belonged to his father," Natalie said, not looking up. "I want it to be perfect." Her father's non-committal sound spoke volumes. Samuel arrived on Friday evening, just as Natalie was preparing to close the shop. The setting sun cast long shadows through the windows, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. He looked better than he had the previous week, less haunted, though she could still see the weight he carried in the set of his shoulders. "Mr. Turner," she greeted him, unable to suppress her smile. "Your watch is ready." She placed it on the counter between them, the silver case now polished, gleaming in the fading light. Samuel picked it up reverently, opened the case, and his eyes widened at the sound of the steady tick-tick-tick. "You fixed it," he breathed. "I can hardly believe it. I took it to a watchmaker in Kansas City 2 years back, and he said it was beyond repair." "Nothing is beyond repair if you care enough to fix it properly," Natalie said. "The balance staff had to be machined from scratch, and I had to adjust the escapement, but the original movement is all there. It will run for another 50 years if you maintain it." Samuel looked up at her, and the expression on his face made her breath catch. "How much do I owe you?" she told him, and he counted out the money carefully, then added $2 extra, "for the care you put into it." "That is not necessary." "Yes, it is." He closed the watch and tucked it into his vest pocket, right over his heart. "Miss Voss, I wonder if I could ask you something?" "Yes. Would you allow me to take you to dinner, as thanks for the watch and for your kindness?" Natalie's heart hammered against her ribs. This was forward, perhaps too forward for propriety, but she found she did not care. "I would like that very much. Tomorrow evening, I could pick you up at 6. 6 would be perfect." After he left, Wilhelm emerged from the workshop where he had clearly been listening. "So, dinner, Papa." I said nothing, but he was smiling. Your mother would approve. He has sad eyes but kind ones, and he honors his father's memory. These are good signs. That night, Natalie lay in bed listening to the grandfather clock in the hall downstairs, the one her father had built the year she was born. Every tick was a second of her life passing, bringing her closer to tomorrow evening, closer to Samuel Turner, and whatever this thing was that had sparked between them in the midst of violence and grief. Samuel arrived promptly at 6 the next evening, wearing clean clothes and a nervous expression. He had shaved and combed his hair, and Natalie thought he looked handsome in a rough, honest way that had nothing to do with polish and everything to do with character. "Miss Voss," he said, offering his arm, "you look beautiful." She had worn her best dress, a deep blue that her father said matched her eyes. "Thank you, Mr. Turner. Please call me Samuel. Mr. Turner makes me feel like my father. Then you must call me Natalie." They walked to the hotel restaurant, one of the nicer establishments in Guthrie. The town was still young, barely established since the land run of 1889 had opened Oklahoma Territory to settlement. Many buildings were raw lumber, unpainted, thrown up in haste. But the hotel had pretensions to elegance, with white tablecloths and actual china. Over dinner, they talked. Samuel told her about growing up in Texas, about how his father had been a rancher who taught him to love the land and respect the animals in their care. He always said that a cow has as much right to a good life as any man, that just because we raise them for meat does not mean we should not treat them with dignity. "He sounds like a wonderful man," Natalie said. "He was. He died trying to pull a calf from a flooding creek. Saved the calf, but the current took him." Samuel's hand went unconsciously to his vest pocket, to where his father's watch now ticked. "I wear his watch to remember that he died saving something, that his last act was one of mercy." Natalie reached across the table and took his hand. "It was bold, but it felt right. And you hate that your last act toward Jack Reeves was violence." Samuel's fingers closed around hers. "Yes, I keep thinking there must have been another way. If I had been faster to speak, slower to anger, something different." He drew on you, Samuel. "You cannot blame yourself for his choices. My head knows that. My heart is taking longer to accept it." She understood, she realized. Her mother's death had been from fever, unavoidable, but Natalie had still spent months cataloging every moment she might have done something different. Gotten the doctor sooner, tried different remedies, prayed harder. Grief made mathematicians of everyone, trying to calculate a different outcome from the same cruel numbers. "Time helps," she said quietly. "Not fixes, but helps. The sharp edges wear smooth." They talked for hours, until the restaurant staff began dropping hints that they would like to close. Samuel walked her home through streets grown dark, the Oklahoma sky vast overhead, scattered with more stars than seemed possible. At her door, he hesitated. "I would like to see you again," he said. "If that would be acceptable." "It would be very acceptable. Tomorrow is Sunday. Could I escort you to church?" Natalie laughed. "You do not strike me as particularly religious, Samuel Turner." He grinned, and it transformed his face, chasing away the shadows. "No, but I am willing to become so if it means spending time with you." Honest answer. "I appreciate that. Yes, you may escort me to church." He tipped his hat and left, and Natalie went inside to find her father still awake, working on the church tower clock mechanism at the dining table. "Good evening," Wilhelm asked without looking up. "Very good." Natalie sat down across from him, picking up a small screwdriver to help with the work. "Papa, how did you know Mama was the one?" Wilhelm finally looked at her, his weathered face softening. She made time feel different. The hours with her passed like minutes, but each minute felt full, complete. "Does he make time feel different?" "Yes," Natalie whispered. Like every second matters more. Then he might be the one. Samuel did escort her to church, and the service felt less tedious than usual with him beside her. Afterward, several townspeople approached him, shaking his hand, expressing support. The incident with Jack Reeves had been ruled justified by the territorial authorities, and public opinion seemed to be in Samuel's favor. Reeves had been known as a troublemaker, quick to anger and quicker to violence. Still, Natalie noticed how Samuel flinched slightly each time someone mentioned it, how his jaw tightened. This was not something he would get over quickly, she realized. It might be something he never fully got over. The question was whether she was willing to be with someone who carried that kind of weight. She looked at him standing in the churchyard, sun on his face, talking quietly with Sheriff Morrison, and she knew the answer. Yes, she was willing, because everyone carried something. Her father carried her mother's death. She carried the guilt of not being able to save her mother, the fear of never being enough. Samuel carried the weight of Jack Reeves's last moment. These were the burdens of being human, of caring, of being present in a world that was often cruel. And maybe, she thought, two people could carry their burdens better together than alone. Summer faded into fall. Samuel came by the shop every few days, sometimes with an excuse like needing his saddle buckle repaired or asking advice about a gift for his boss's wife, sometimes with no excuse at all. He would sit at the counter and watch Natalie work, asking questions about clock mechanisms, marveling at her skill with tools so small they seemed designed for fairy hands. On cooler evenings, they would walk together through Guthrie, watching the town grow and change. New buildings went up constantly. The railroad brought more people, more commerce, more life. The territorial government was establishing itself, bringing order to what had been chaos just a few years before. You ever think about the future? Samuel asked one October evening as they walked along the creek outside town. The cottonwoods were turning gold, leaves drifting down like wishes. Of course, Natalie said. What about it specifically? Where you will be in 5 years, 10 years, what your life will look like. She considered this. I always thought I would take over my father's shop someday. He is getting older, his hands are not as steady as they were. I could run the business, maybe expand it. There are not many clockmakers in the territory. That sounds like a good life. Samuel picked up a smooth stone and sent it skipping across the creek's surface, 3 bounces before it sank. I have been thinking about buying some land. Not a big ranch like the Double T, but something I could manage myself. Maybe 100 acres, enough for a small herd. Build a house, put down roots. That sounds like a good life too, Natalie said softly. Samuel stopped walking and turned to face her. Natalie, I need to tell you something. I am falling in love with you. I have been falling since the moment you gave me that glass of water and looked at me like I was a person worth saving. I know it is fast, maybe too fast, but I do not believe in wasting time. My father's death taught me that. The shooting taught me that again. Life is too short to pretend we do not feel what we feel. Natalie's breath caught in her throat. The sun was setting behind Samuel, painting him in gold and crimson, and she thought about how her father had described meeting her mother. She makes time feel different. That is what Samuel did. Minutes with him were both infinite and fleeting, each one precious. I am falling in love with you too, she said, and watched relief and joy break across his face like sunrise. It terrifies me because I lost my mother and I know how much loss hurts, but I think not loving you would hurt worse. Samuel closed the distance between them and cupped her face in his work-roughened hands. I cannot promise I will never leave you. None of us can make that promise. But I can promise that every day I have, I will choose you. Every moment will count. When he kissed her, it was gentle and sweet and tasted like promise. The creek burbled beside them, and somewhere a bird called out its evening song, and Natalie thought that if time could be bottled, she would bottle this moment and keep it on a shelf in her father's shop forever. They courted through fall and into winter. Wilhelm approved, which mattered to Natalie more than she had realized it would. Samuel started taking dinner with them several nights a week, and she loved watching him and her father talk about everything from ranching to clockwork to politics. Wilhelm taught Samuel how to repair simple clock mechanisms, and Samuel taught Wilhelm rope tricks and how to read weather patterns. "He will make a good husband," Wilhelm said one night after Samuel had left. "But Natalie, you must understand, if you marry him, your life will not be easy. He is a ranch foreman now, but he wants his own land. That means hard work, uncertainty. It means you might have to give up the clock shop." "I know, Papa." Natalie cleaned the dinner dishes carefully. "But I also know that I want a life with him. We will figure out the details." "Your mother gave up much to marry me," Wilhelm said quietly. "Her family wanted her to marry a banker, someone established. But she chose me, a poor immigrant clockmaker with more dreams than money. She never regretted it, but there were hard years. I want you to understand what you are choosing." "You are asking if love is enough. I am asking if you have counted the cost." Natalie dried her hands and sat down beside her father. "Papa, you taught me that every second counts. Samuel makes me understand why. When I am with him, I am not thinking about the past or worrying about the future. I am just there, present, alive. Is that not worth something?" Wilhelm took her hand. "That is worth everything. I just needed to know you had thought it through. Your mother, she always said I worried too much. You do worry too much. It is a father's job." In December, Samuel asked Wilhelm for permission to marry Natalie. He did it formally, nervously, standing in the shop after hours with his hat in his hands, the same way he had stood that first day after the shooting. "Mr. Voss, I would like to ask for your daughter's hand in marriage. I know I am not rich, and my prospects are uncertain, but I love her with everything I am. I will spend my life trying to make her happy." Wilhelm regarded him seriously. "Do you understand what you are asking? Natalie is not just my daughter. She is my partner in this business, my best student. She has a gift, a real talent. If she marries you, she may have to give that up." "I would never ask her to give up anything," Samuel said firmly. "If Natalie wants to continue working with clocks, we will find a way. Her happiness matters more to me than traditional expectations." This apparently was the right answer. Wilhelm smiled and extended his hand. "Then yes, you have my blessing. Take care of her, Samuel. She is all I have left of her mother." "I will guard her like the precious treasure she is," Samuel promised. He proposed on Christmas Eve, in the shop surrounded by ticking clocks, each one marking the seconds of this perfect moment. He had bought a simple gold band, all he could afford, but Natalie did not care about the ring's size or cost. She cared about the man offering it, about the life they would build together. "Yes," she said. "Yes, yes, yes." They married in February of 1886 in the small church where they had attended services together. Natalie wore her mother's wedding dress, carefully preserved, the white silk still perfect after 25 years. Samuel wore a new suit that had cost him a month's wages, and the look on his face when she walked down the aisle made every expense worthwhile. Wilhelm cried during the ceremony, tears running openly down his face. Natalie had rarely seen her father cry, but she understood. He was not just giving away his daughter. He was letting go of the last piece of his wife, the child they had made together, who had her mother's eyes and her mother's grace. The reception was held at the hotel, the same restaurant where Samuel had taken Natalie on their first date. Friends and neighbors came, bringing gifts and good wishes. The ranch owner where Samuel worked, Thomas Thorne, gave them a generous check and announced that he was giving Samuel a raise. "You are the best foreman I have ever had," Thorne said, his voice carrying across the room. "And if you want to start looking for land of your own, I will help you find financing. Good men deserve good futures." It was more than they had hoped for. Samuel squeezed Natalie's hand under the table, and she squeezed back, a conversation in pressure and warmth that needed no words. They spent their wedding night in the hotel's best room, and Natalie discovered that physical love was both more awkward and more wonderful than she had imagined. There was fumbling and laughter and moments of uncertainty, but there was also tenderness and passion, and a sense of rightness that made everything else fade away. Afterward, lying in Samuel's arms with her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat slow and steady, Natalie thought about time. How it could be measured in seconds and minutes and hours, but also in heartbeats and breaths and moments of perfect happiness. Her father made clocks to capture time, to hold it in brass and steel and glass. But maybe the real way to hold time was this, to be so completely present in a moment that it burned itself into memory, permanent as any engraving. "What are you thinking?" Samuel murmured, his hand stroking her hair. "That I am happy, that I love you, that I cannot wait to see what our future holds. I love you too." He kissed the top of her head, "And whatever the future brings, we will face it together." They moved into a small house Samuel had been renting on the edge of town, close enough to the Double T Ranch that he could ride to work easily, close enough to Wilhelm's shop that Natalie could continue helping her father. The house had 2 rooms and a lean-to kitchen, but it was theirs, and they made it home. Natalie continued working at the clock shop 3 days a week, spending the other days managing their household and helping Samuel with ranch records. He had never been good with numbers and letters, having left school young to help his own father, but he was smart and learned quickly when she taught him better bookkeeping methods. Spring came, and with it news that made Natalie's heart soar and terrify her in equal measure. She was pregnant. Dr. Harrison confirmed it in April, telling her to expect the baby in late November or early December. Samuel's reaction when she told him was everything she could have wished. He picked her up and spun her around, laughing with pure joy, then immediately set her down with exaggerated care. "Should you be spun? Is that safe? Should you be resting, Samuel? I am pregnant, not made of glass. I can still function normally." But he fussed over her anyway, and she found it endearing rather than annoying. He insisted she work fewer hours at the shop. He took over all the heavy household chores. He read to her in the evenings from whatever books they could borrow, his voice rumbling pleasantly as she mended or knitted tiny clothes. Wilhelm was delighted about becoming a grandfather. "Your mother would have loved this," he said, touching Natalie's growing belly with gentle reverence. "She always wanted many grandchildren, a house full of noise and life." "Tell me about when she was pregnant with me," Natalie asked. They were in the shop, supposedly working on a complex French mantel clock, but mostly just talking. "She was fearless," Wilhelm remembered. "Even when the pain started and the midwife said it was too soon, she was calm. She held my hand and told me everything would be fine, that she knew in her bones you were strong. And she was right. You came into the world fighting, ready to live. Was she afraid? Of course. But she did not let fear stop her from joy. That was her gift, I think. She could hold both things at once, fear and joy, sorrow and hope. She was braver than I ever was." The summer was hot, and Natalie's pregnancy made it feel even hotter. She spent afternoons sitting in the shop where it was cooler, working on delicate clock repairs that did not require much movement. Customers brought her their broken timepieces, and she fixed them one by one, her hands still steady despite her changing body. Samuel came by every day at lunch, bringing her food from the hotel restaurant and fussing over whether she was drinking enough water. Other men might have been uncomfortable with their wives working so visibly pregnant, but Samuel seemed proud. He would stand beside her, hand on her shoulder, and tell customers, "My wife is the finest clockmaker in Oklahoma Territory. Our child will probably be born understanding gear ratios." In October, Thomas Thorne approached Samuel with an opportunity. A ranch to the west was selling out, 160 acres with a small house and barn. The price was reasonable, and with Thorne's help securing a bank loan, Samuel could afford it. "It is everything I wanted," Samuel told Natalie that evening, his eyes bright with excitement. Then his face fell. "But the timing is wrong. You are due in 2 months and starting a ranch is hard work. Maybe we should wait." Natalie took his hands in hers. "The opportunity might not come again. If this is what you want, we should do it. But the baby will be born whether we are here or there. And honestly, Samuel, I would rather raise our children on our own land than in a rented house in town. We can make this work." They bought the ranch in November, moving their modest possessions in a borrowed wagon. The house was small, just 3 rooms, but it had good bones and a solid roof. The land was beautiful, rolling prairie with a creek running through it and enough grass to support a small herd. Wilhelm helped them move, his face troubled. "You are far from town now," he said to Natalie. 20 miles. If the baby comes early, if there are complications. Then Samuel will ride for the doctor, and you will come stay with me until the birth," Natalie said calmly. "Papa, we cannot live our lives afraid of what might happen. You taught me that when you let me use your tools as a child. Remember, Mama said I was too young, that I might hurt myself, but you said I would never learn if I did not try. Your mother never let me hear the end of that after you cut your thumb on a mainspring," Wilhelm muttered, but he smiled. "You are right. Live your life, my daughter. Just be careful." The baby came on a cold December night, 3 weeks earlier than expected. Natalie woke to pain and wetness, and the sudden knowledge that everything was about to change. Samuel rode through the darkness to fetch Wilhelm and the midwife from town, his horse nearly foundering with the speed he demanded. By the time they arrived, Natalie's pains were coming fast and hard. The midwife, a capable woman named Mrs. Anderson, examined her and pronounced everything normal but progressing quickly. Wilhelm held his daughter's hand, murmuring German prayers and encouragements while Samuel paced like a caged animal. "First babies usually take longer," Mrs. Anderson said. "But your little one seems eager to meet the world." She was right. Just after dawn, as pink light spilled through the bedroom window, Natalie gave birth to a son. He came out wailing, red-faced and furious, and Natalie laughed through her tears at the sheer, indignant volume of his cries. "A boy," Mrs. Anderson announced, laying the baby on Natalie's chest. "Healthy lungs, all his fingers and toes. Congratulations, Mama." Samuel came to the bedside, his face wet with tears, and touched his son with trembling fingers. "He is perfect," he whispered. "Natalie, you are amazing." "He is perfect." They named him Thomas Samuel Turner, after both his grandfather Thomas and his father Samuel, though they called him Tom from the start. He had Samuel's dark hair and Natalie's green eyes and a personality that made itself known immediately. He wanted what he wanted when he wanted it, and he had no problem making his demands known. Wilhelm stayed for a week, helping around the ranch and spending hours just watching his grandson sleep. "He looks like you did," he told Natalie. "Same determined chin." "Your mother would have spoiled him rotten." "You are going to spoil him rotten," Natalie teased. "That is a grandfather's right." The winter was hard but good. Samuel worked tirelessly on the ranch, building fences and shelters for the small herd of cattle he had purchased. Natalie managed the household and cared for Tom, amazed daily by how much love she could feel for this tiny, demanding person. On the evenings when Samuel came in exhausted from his work, he would wash up and then take Tom, cradling him with hands that could rope a steer but held his son like he was made of light. He would walk the floor, singing off-key cowboy songs, and Tom would gaze up at his father with absolute trust. "Every second with him counts," Samuel said one night, echoing the words that had become their unofficial motto. "I do not want to miss anything." "You will not," Natalie promised. "We are building this together, remember, all of it." Spring brought new life to the ranch. The cattle had survived the winter well, and several cows were pregnant. Samuel hired a young ranch hand named Peter to help with the work, a quiet boy of 19 who was good with animals and grateful for steady employment. Natalie found herself with a bit more time, and she set up a small workspace in the corner of the sitting room. She sent word to her father's customers that she was available for clock repairs, and soon people were making the trip out to the ranch to drop off timepieces. It was not as much work as she had done in town, but it was enough to keep her skills sharp and bring in extra money. Wilhelm came to visit once a month, always bringing supplies and news from town. He would stay for a few days, working on complex repairs that Natalie had saved for him, playing with Tom, helping Samuel with ranch projects. His health was declining slowly, his hands shakier, his breathing more labored, but his mind remained sharp. "I am thinking of selling the shop," he told them one warm May evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "I am too old for full-time work, and the travel back and forth from here to see Tom is becoming difficult." "Papa, no," Natalie protested. "That shop is your life." "Tom is my life. You are my life. The shop is just a building full of clocks." Wilhelm smiled at her. "I could move out here, live in the small house by the barn that Samuel fixed up for Peter. Peter could move into the room off the kitchen. I could still do some repairs, but mostly I could spend time with my grandson." Samuel and Natalie exchanged glances. They had discussed this possibility before but had not wanted to push. Having Wilhelm here would be wonderful, but only if it was what he truly wanted. "Are you sure?" Samuel asked. "Guthrie is your home. All your friends are there." "My family is here," Wilhelm said simply. "At my age, family matters more than anything else. And besides, Peter told me last week that he would like to learn clockmaking. I could teach him, train an apprentice. The work would continue even after I am gone." So Wilhelm sold the shop to a newly arrived jeweler who promised to maintain the clock repair business. He moved to the ranch in June, bringing his most precious tools and the grandfather clock he had built the year Natalie was born. Peter moved into the kitchen room and began learning clockmaking in his spare time, his young hands learning the delicate work under Wilhelm's patient instruction. The house felt full in the best way. Wilhelm and Peter working on clocks at the dining table, Tom crawling across the floor chasing dust motes, Samuel coming in from the range smelling of sun and grass and cattle, Natalie cooking or mending or working on her own repairs. It was noisy and chaotic and absolutely perfect. That summer, Natalie discovered she was pregnant again. This time she was less afraid and more confident. She knew what to expect, knew her body could do this. Samuel's reaction was joy mixed with immediate concern about her working too hard, which made her laugh. "I have a live-in nanny in the form of my father," she pointed out. "And Peter helps more than he needs to, and you hover like a mother hen. I think I will manage fine." The second pregnancy was easier than the first, or maybe Natalie was just too busy to dwell on discomforts. Tom was an active toddler by the time his sister was born in April of 1888, a placid baby girl they named Eliza Marion Turner after Samuel's mother and Natalie's mother respectively. If Tom had been demanding, Eliza was easy. She nursed well, slept well, and seemed content to simply observe the world with wide, interested eyes. Wilhelm called her his little philosopher, said she was thinking deep thoughts behind that calm expression. Tom was fascinated by his sister, wanting to help with everything. He would bring her toys, pat her head gently, and tell her long, rambling stories that made no sense but clearly felt important to him. Natalie watched her son become a brother and felt her heart expand even further. The ranch prospered. Samuel's hard work and good judgment paid off. The herd grew, cattle prices were decent, and they were able to pay down their loan faster than expected. Samuel hired another hand, an older cowboy named Dusty who had a gift for training horses. Soon they were breeding horses as well as raising cattle, diversifying in a way that provided security. Natalie's clock repair business also grew. She had developed a reputation for quality work, and people would travel from surrounding counties to bring her their timepieces. She raised her prices slightly and limited the number of repairs she accepted each month, working only on the most interesting or challenging pieces. This gave her time with her children while still keeping her skills sharp. Wilhelm's health continued to decline slowly. He was in his late 60s now, his body wearing out the way any well-used machine eventually does. But he remained cheerful, spending his days playing with Tom and Eliza, teaching Peter clockmaking, and occasionally doing simple repairs when his hands were steady enough. "I am content," he told Natalie one evening. They were sitting on the porch, watching Tom chase fireflies while Eliza slept in Natalie's arms. "Your mother and I always dreamed of a house full of family, and here it is. I got to see you happy, settled with a good man and beautiful children. That is everything." "Do not talk like you are dying tomorrow," Natalie said, though her voice caught. "You have years left, perhaps, but even if I do not, I have no complaints. I live to see what matters most." In the summer of 1889, Natalie became pregnant for a third time. This pregnancy was harder than the previous two, with more sickness and fatigue. Samuel worried constantly, but Natalie insisted she was fine, just older and busier than she had been with the first two. The baby, another boy they named William after Wilhelm, was born in March of 1890. The birth was difficult, and Dr. Harrison told them afterward that Natalie should probably not have more children. The risks increased with each pregnancy, and another one could be dangerous. Samuel and Natalie discussed it seriously that night, holding their newborn son between them. "3 children is a blessing," Samuel said. "I do not need more if having more puts you at risk. Are you certain? I know you come from a large family." "I come from a family where my mother died in childbirth with her 7th baby," Samuel said quietly. "I was 12. I watched my father fall apart from grief. I will not risk that, Natalie. You are more important to me than anything." "We have been blessed," Natalie agreed. 3 healthy children, a thriving ranch family around us. Let us be grateful for what we have." Life settled into a rhythm. The children grew, the ranch prospered, seasons turned. Tom became a serious boy who loved helping his father with the cattle and horses. Eliza developed her mother's talent with fine motor skills and spent hours watching Natalie and Wilhelm repair clocks. William was a wild child, fearless and energetic, keeping everyone on their toes. In the spring of 1891, Wilhelm's health took a sharp downturn. He developed a cough that would not go away, and Dr. Harrison diagnosed him with pneumonia. Despite everyone's best efforts, Wilhelm grew weaker. He spent his last days in the bedroom, surrounded by family, occasionally lucid and often drifting on a soft May morning, with Natalie holding his hand and the grandchildren playing outside where he could hear their laughter through the open window. Wilhelm Voss died peacefully. His last words were in German, a language Natalie barely understood but recognized. "I am coming, Marion." They buried him on the ranch, on a hill overlooking the creek. Samuel carved a headstone from local stone, and Peter installed a clock mechanism in a glass case at the grave, a clock that would need to be wound weekly, ensuring that someone would visit Wilhelm regularly. It was Natalie's idea, and Samuel thought it was perfect. "Time never stops," she said at the funeral, her voice steady despite her tears. "My father taught me that. Every second counts, every moment matters. He measured time his whole life, but what he really did was teach people to value it. He taught me that love is shown in small moments, in consistent presence, in the everyday choice to show up and do the work. He was the best father, the best clockmaker, the best man, and his time with us, every second of it, counted." After Wilhelm's death, Peter took over most of the clock repair work, having learned well from his master. He married a local girl named Sarah in 1892, and they moved into a house they built on the far edge of the ranch property. Sarah helped Natalie with the children and household work, becoming as much a friend as an employee. The years passed, marked by the ticking of Wilhelm's clocks, which filled the house with their constant reminders that time marched on. Tom grew tall and strong, learning ranching from his father and clockmaking from his mother. Eliza developed into a quiet, capable girl with steady hands and a gift for mathematics. William remained a whirlwind, but channeled his energy into horse training, showing an almost supernatural ability to communicate with animals. In 1895, when Tom was 9 and already doing a man's work around the ranch, Samuel sat down with Natalie one evening and pulled out a worn ledger. "We have paid off the ranch loan," he said, his voice filled with satisfaction. "The land is ours, free and clear, and we have money saved, enough to buy more land if we wanted or to send the children to good schools." Natalie looked at the numbers, seeing the results of years of hard work and careful management. "We did it," she said softly. "We built something real. We did it together." Samuel closed the ledger and took her hands. "Natalie, I wake up every morning grateful. Grateful for you, for our children, for this life. That day I walked into your father's shop, I was lost. I had just killed a man and I did not know how to live with myself. But you looked at me and saw someone worth saving. You made every second count." "You made them count too," Natalie said, tears in her eyes. "You could have given up after Jack Reeves, could have let guilt destroy you, but you chose to live, to love, to build. That took courage." They sat together in the gathering darkness, the house around them filled with the sounds of their children playing one last game before bedtime, the ever-present tick of clocks marking seconds into minutes into hours. Outside, the ranch stretched away into shadow, land they had tamed and made productive through sweat and determination and love. The turn of the century came, and with it changes. Oklahoma Territory was moving toward statehood. Guthrie was growing, becoming more civilized. Railroads crisscrossed the territory, bringing goods and people from the wider world. The wild frontier was fading, becoming something more settled, more predictable. Tom, at 14, started talking about college. He wanted to study agricultural science, to learn new techniques for ranching and farming. Samuel and Natalie encouraged him, proud that their son wanted to better himself through education. Eliza, at 12, showed no interest in leaving the ranch. She wanted to learn everything she could about clocks, about mathematics, about the precise beauty of mechanical systems. Peter taught her alongside his own apprentice, amazed at how quickly she grasped complex concepts. William, at 10, just wanted to work with horses. He was already gentling colts that had defeated more experienced hands, using patience and instinct in equal measure. "We have raised good children," Samuel said one night. "We have been blessed," Natalie agreed. In 1901, disaster nearly struck. A prairie fire swept across the region, driven by high winds and fed by drought-dry grass. Samuel and every available hand fought for 2 days to save the ranch, digging fire breaks and beating out flames. In the end, they lost some grazing land and an old barn, but the house and main structures survived. The cattle scattered but were mostly recovered over the following weeks. Natalie spent those 2 days terrified, watching the smoke on the horizon, ready to evacuate with the children if the wind shifted. When Samuel finally came home, black with soot and exhausted to the bone, she held him and cried with relief. "I thought I might lose you," she said against his chest. "You will not lose me," he promised. "Not until time itself runs out for both of us." They rebuilt what was lost and implemented better fire prevention measures. The scare had reminded them how quickly everything could change, how precious their life together was. They took time to appreciate small moments more consciously. Family dinners, Sunday picnics, evening walks, bedtime stories. Tom left for college in 1903, attending the agricultural college in Kansas. His absence left a hole in the family, but his letters came regularly, full of excitement about his studies and dreams for the future. He wanted to come back to the ranch after graduation, to implement new breeding and management techniques. That same year, Samuel's father's watch stopped working. Natalie tried to fix it, but found that the case had cracked, allowing moisture to damage components that could not be repaired. The watch that had brought them together was beyond saving. Samuel was devastated. "It is the last thing I have of my father," he said. Natalie held the ruined watch, thinking. Then she carefully disassembled it, saving every piece that was intact. Over the next month, working in secret, she built something new. A mantle clock whose movement incorporated parts from Samuel's father's watch. She engraved a plaque for it. "Built from Thomas Turner's watch, 1903. Time passes, but love endures." When she gave it to Samuel on his birthday, he wept openly. "How did you do this?" "I am a clockmaker," she said simply. "We find ways to make broken things run again." The clock sat on their mantle from then on, ticking away with some of the original gears from Samuel's father's watch. Every time Samuel wound it, once a week, he thought of his father, of Natalie, of how time connected all things. In 1905, Eliza announced that she wanted to open her own clock shop in Guthrie. At 17, she was already as skilled as most professional clockmakers, having learned from Wilhelm and Peter and her mother. Samuel and Natalie gave her their blessing and helped her set up a small shop on Main Street. William, at 15, took over most of the horse training operations, developing a reputation that brought buyers from as far as Texas. The ranch's horse breeding program became as profitable as the cattle operation. Tom returned from college in 1907, degree in hand, full of ideas. Under his management, the ranch's productivity increased dramatically. He implemented rotational grazing, improved breeding practices, and better financial systems. Samuel stepped back gradually, letting his son take over more of the daily operations. "I am getting old," Samuel told Natalie one evening. They were in their mid-40s now, their hair touched with gray, their bodies marked by years of hard work. "Sometimes I wake up and wonder where the time went." "It went into this," Natalie said, gesturing at the house around them, the ranch beyond, the family they had built. "Every second of it." That winter, Samuel developed a bad cough that lingered for months. Dr. Harrison, now an old man himself, diagnosed chronic bronchitis, a result of years working in all weather. He prescribed rest, but Samuel was not good at resting. He continued working, just at a slower pace, letting Tom and William handle the heaviest tasks. Natalie worried but tried not to show it. She made sure Samuel took his medicine, insisted he sleep more, prepared nutritious meals. At night, she would lie beside him listening to his breathing, afraid each rattling inhale might be the last. But Samuel was stubborn. He recovered as winter turned to spring, his cough fading with the warmer weather. He started working more again, though Natalie noticed he tired more easily than before. "We are not young anymore," she said gently. "No," Samuel agreed, "but we are not done yet either." In 1910, Tom married a schoolteacher named Catherine, and they moved into a house he built on the ranch. In 1911, they gave Samuel and Natalie their first grandchild, a girl named Marion after both her great-grandmothers. Holding that baby, Natalie felt the circle complete somehow. She thought of her mother, of Wilhelm, of all the time and love that had flowed from generation to generation. "Look at what we made," Samuel said, watching their granddaughter sleep. "Not just children, but this whole life. The ranch, the family, the connections. We built something that will outlast us." "Every second counted," Natalie said softly, repeating the words that had become their truth. Eliza's clock shop thrived, and she trained apprentices of her own. William married a rancher's daughter named Lucy, and they talked about starting their own horse ranch eventually. The Turner family was growing, spreading, making marks on Oklahoma that would last for generations. In 1912, the pocket watch Samuel had inherited from his father, or rather the mantel clock Natalie had built from it, stopped working. Natalie examined it and found that the mainspring, which had been original to the watch, had finally broken beyond repair after decades of service. "I cannot fix it this time," she told Samuel. "The spring is too damaged and I do not have another like it." Samuel held the silent clock, running his fingers over the engraving. "That is all right," he said. "It ran for over 40 years. My father would say that is more than enough. Some things are not meant to last forever, just long enough to do their job. This clock brought us together, and it has marked the hours of our life. If its time is done, we can let it rest." They placed the clock on a shelf in their bedroom, silent now but still precious. Sometimes Samuel would pick it up and hold it, remembering his father, remembering the young man he had been when he first walked into Wilhelm's clock shop, lost and seeking redemption. As Oklahoma moved toward statehood in 1907 and then grew into its identity afterward, Samuel and Natalie grew old together. They slowed down but never stopped. Natalie still repaired clocks, though only special pieces now. Samuel still worked the ranch, though mostly in an advisory capacity. Their children were established, successful. Tom ran the ranch brilliantly. Eliza's clock shop was the finest in Oklahoma. William's horses were sought after throughout the region. The grandchildren came regularly, filling the house with noise and life. On quiet evenings, Samuel and Natalie would sit on the porch they had built together, watching the sun set over land they had tamed and loved. They would hold hands, comfortable in the silence that comes when two people know each other so completely that words are optional. "Do you have any regrets?" Samuel asked one evening in 1915. They were both 55 now, their faces lined, their bodies slower, but their love as strong as ever. "None," Natalie said firmly. Just that I will not live forever to keep loving you." "Then we will make every second count while we can." And they did. Through illness and health, through good years and hard ones, through the joys of grandchildren and the sorrows of friends passing, they loved each other. Not with the wild passion of youth, which had burned out long ago, but with something deeper and more enduring. The steady, constant love of two people who had chosen each other every single day for 30 years. In 1920, Samuel's health took a serious downturn. The bronchitis returned, worse this time, settling deep in his lungs. Dr. Harrison's son, who had taken over his father's practice, diagnosed chronic lung disease. There was no cure, only management. Samuel spent more time resting, his body finally demanding the rest he had always denied it. Natalie sat with him, reading aloud, talking about their life, their children, their memories. Sometimes Tom or Eliza or William would visit, bringing grandchildren to cheer their father. "I am not afraid of dying," Samuel told Natalie one afternoon. "I have lived a full life, a good life. I got to love you, to raise our children, to build something meaningful. What more could a man ask?" "Many more years," Natalie said, tears in her eyes. "I am not ready to lose you." "You will never lose me," Samuel said gently. "I will be in every clock you repair, every sunset you watch, every moment with our children and grandchildren. Love does not end when time stops, Natalie. It just changes form." He died on a clear October morning in 1921, with Natalie holding his hand and autumn sun streaming through the window. His last words were, "Every second counted." The grief nearly broke Natalie. For 36 years, Samuel had been the center of her world. Without him, time felt meaningless, the ticking of clocks that had always comforted her now seeming like mockery. What was the point of measuring time when the person who made time matter was gone? But she had children who needed her, grandchildren who loved her, a ranch that required decisions. She could not fall apart, not completely. So she grieved, but she also lived. She continued repairing clocks, finding solace in the precise work. She spent time with family. She sat on the porch Samuel had built and remembered 36 years of love one day. About a year after Samuel's death, Natalie picked up the silent mantel clock she had made from his father's watch. She held it, thinking about time, about Samuel, about how love connected all things across all moments. Then she carried it out to Wilhelm's grave on the hill. She placed it in the glass case next to the clock she had installed when her father died, the two timepieces sitting side by side. One still ticking, marking Wilhelm's time, one forever stopped, marking Samuel's last moment. "Every second counted," she said, to the wind, to the grass, to the memories that lived in this place. "Every single one." Natalie lived another 15 years, dying peacefully in her sleep in 1936, at the age of 76. Her children buried her between Wilhelm and Samuel, and Eliza installed a third clock in a case at her grave. This one built entirely by Natalie years before, its movement precise and perfect, and forever running as long as someone wound it. The Turner Ranch continued through generations. Tom's children ran it, and then their children. The house was expanded, modernized, but the original rooms remained, full of clocks that ticked away the seconds and minutes and hours. Wilhelm's grandfather clock still stood in the hall, still keeping perfect time. Samuel's mantel clock remained at his grave, silent but honored. And in Guthrie, Eliza's clock shop became a Turner family institution, passed from mother to daughter for over a century, each generation learning the lessons Wilhelm and Natalie had taught. That time is precious, that every second counts, that love can be measured in small, consistent acts of care. The story of the clockmaker's daughter and the cowboy who had made every second count became family legend, told to each new generation. How they had met in violence but found love. How they had built a life from nothing but hard work and devotion. How they had measured their time together not in years but in moments, each one valued, each one cherished in the end. That was what mattered. Not the number of days they had been given, but what they had done with those days. They had loved deeply. They had raised good children. They had built something lasting. They had made every second count, and that, the family agreed, was the greatest success any life could claim.